Ms. Shackelford, go ahead and call your next witness.
Okay, the people would call Sergeant Plummer to the stand.
Sergeant, if you can raise your right hand, solemnly swear affirm the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, so help you God.
Yes, Your Honor.
Have a seat.
Sir, can you state your full name and employment capacity for me?
Yes, I'm a detective sergeant with the state police. My name is James Plummer, Plummer.
And are you the officer in charge on this case, sir?
That's correct.
Okay, and can you tell me briefly how it is you became the officer in charge and when you became the officer in charge?
Yes, I was asked to assist in reviewing this case in July of 2020. I then, through the course of my review, ended up taking the case over in August of 2020.
And since then, it's been with you?
Yes.
Sergeant Plummer, I want to start by talking about this geofence search warrants and the process that one goes through. It's my understanding, are there multiple search warrants that happen when you do a geofence?
It depends. The way I usually write my my legal process, usually it's one search warrant that covers 3 steps. I have had Google get back and request additional depending on who's reviewing it. And then at that point, I would get additional for steps, say 2 or 3.
All right, so let's talk about step 1 on a geofence search warrant. What's step 1?
Step 1 is to identify the geographical location in question. In this case, would be the crime scene or each of Covington's residents. I then encompass the area, finding lat-long points, and make a geographical box. Usually there are 4 points, they can be more. In this case, I did a 4-point geographical box covering the crime scene.
Okay, and so that's the first search warrant you would, or well, everything would be in the search warrant, but that's the first step.
That's correct.
What's step 2?
Step 2 is Google gets back with any device IDs that they identify within the geographical location within the time requested. They then give a lat long for those points when they are located within that geographical box, and then they request that I sort through that to identify further, request further on the devices that are deemed suspicious.
Okay, so you basically send them a box and say, I want any devices that communicated within this range, right?
That's correct.
And then they send you back all the documents showing what devices?
Yeah, it's an Excel spreadsheet that has the device ID, some other data, including lat and long, the meter hit, if it's a Wi-Fi cell hit, and the meter radius.
Okay. And then step 2 is you say, okay, these devices in this box, I want more identification information on.
Yes. So in my search warrant, I request an hour or so location data for devices identified that I would request further on, which in this case was all devices identified in that first step.
Okay, so when we're talking about Judd Road, you asked for any device that was within your box.
Yes, the first return I got back, I requested additional on every single device located.
Okay, and did you get additional information on any of the devices located?
Yes.
All right, and at some point what's step 3 before I move on?
Step 3 is I get subscriber information, account information for each device requested.
Okay, and do you recall earlier with Sergeant Street, I showed him a Google return?
Yes.
And is that return what you get in step 3?
Yes.
All right, and that's where it actually identifies a phone number and email associated with that device.
That's correct.
Okay. So I want to talk to you. Can you just tell me, now we have a basic idea of how they work. Can you tell me what you did for the Judd Road address?
The Judd Road address, I also did a geographical box around 4 points to include the residents, not the roadway, as well as additional around the residents for a time period around the crime scene.
All right, and did you get information back on all of the phones in that box?
I did.
All right, and what did you do once you got that information?
That geofence only identified one device. I requested additional location data, which was supplied to me. I plotted that location data.
And who did that location data? What account was that associated with?
That was associated with an account, Keisha Johnson.
And did I ask you about Judd Road? We're talking about Judd Road? Okay. All right. We'll come back to Keisha Johnson. What did you do for the crime scene?
The crime scene, I went through each device and researched the names given as well as the phone numbers through law enforcement databases. I was able to identify every device except for one as being a neighbor or a nearby neighbor, as my geographical box included a large area which included neighbor houses. I identified one device that wasn't a neighbor, which was registered one time, but when plotted, it's very far away from the crime scene, and it only hits around like the Judd Sumter area.
Okay, so when we're talking about Egypt Covington's residence, you actually did a larger box that encompassed the area.
That's correct.
Okay, and all of the other devices came back to neighbors.
That's correct.
And then one came back to someone you didn't know, and you investigated that further.
That's correct.
And did that person ever come into the area of Covington's residence?
No, I plotted that device with the meter radius, and it comes nowhere close.
And what about an account for Arthur Richardson?
Yes, there was an account for Arthur Richardson identified.
Okay. So of all of the Google return that you got, you found basically one hitting in that box that couldn't be accounted for.
That's correct.
And now I want to ask you, can you tell me what the distance is from that Citgo gas station at Judd and Hull to Miss Covington's residence?
It is, it's less than 500 feet. I don't know the exact distance, but less than 500 feet.
And ultimately, when you get this information on Richardson's device, we started just on the home on Hull Road, right?
That's correct.
Did you ultimately expand that search for his device?
Yes, I did an additional search warrant on the Google account, requesting basically everything I could associated with that account.
And did you open your time window up?
Yes, I requested a larger range. Initially, I believe I only requested for 2 days and then did subsequent search warrants, just so I could get that information back more quickly before I expanded.
Okay. And so the time range and the location data would then been expanded on Richardson's account.
That's correct.
And did you provide all of those returns to Special Agent Gavin for him to work on?
I only provided to him location data, no other data from the account. Location and subscriber information, as well as certified records.
Okay. Now, when you got back this Google information on the account that was registered to Richardson, do you get anything other than the locations?
Yes, get searches. Some occasions, not this, you'll get saved text messages, saved just any other data that's retained.
Okay. And I want to talk, when you say searches, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yes, in this case, there was just Google searches that were done within that Google account.
Okay. So does that mean someone had a device that was logged into that Google account and they typed literally into Google a search or voice texted a search?
That's correct.
All right, and can you tell me, with respect to the time around this incident on the 22nd and 23rd of 2017 June, did you find any particular Google searches that seemed relevant or important to you?
Yes, there was quite a few searches. I know there was one search conducted, I think it was around noon on the 22nd. And it was a marijuana forum with the title, How to Turn Shake into Bud.
Okay.
There was also a USA Today article search called something like The Ones That Got Away. And basically the article is about how you can escape custody just by crossing state lines. It then referenced Los Angeles police not extraditing homicide suspects that had left California.
And do you know approximately, so you said that search was on June 23rd?
That search was on June 23rd, I believe around noon as well, just a day after the marijuana search.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you, did you ever, so you got this Snapchat provided to you through Miss Cree regarding what appears to be the latest communication or activity she had?
That's correct.
All right. And did you make any attempts to follow up with that with Snapchat?
Yes, a search warrant was presented to Snapchat requesting account information for the time period.
And what, did you get a return on that?
There was a return, but due to the several years had passed, there wasn't much included with that return provided by Snapchat.
All right, so nothing from 2017 came back?
There was a couple things that must have been saved to the count, but very limited, not very much of anything.
Now, did you also do a search warrant for any social media with respect to Timothy Moore?
Yes.
All right, and can you tell me what was it? That
I did several search warrants for several Facebook accounts.
do you recall doing one specifically for the Facebook name Timothy Moore II?
Yes,
All right, and did you get a return on that?
I did.
All right, I'm going to approach with People's Proposed Exhibit 46. Can you take a moment to look at that and tell me if you recognize what's contained in that exhibit?
Yes, this is a few pages from that return from Timothy Moore II.
Okay, and on top of that, do we have a certification of authenticity that these are records kept in regular business activity?
That's correct.
All right, and Your Honor, with that, I'd move for admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 46.
No objection for exam purposes.
No objection.
It's admitted for exam purposes.
And Your Honor, do you mind if I stand near the
No,
witness while we're
go
going
ahead.
through this? So I want to kind of go through this return with you and some items in this return. And I'll notice, or I'll cite the page number specifically from the return while we're going through them for the record. So I have here what's marked as page 184. What are we looking at here?
Yes, would be a photograph posted to the count of arm tattoos.
Okay, and on page 185, what is this information that I see on page 185?
That is the photo information, which shows that it was uploaded on 6/22/2017 at 22:43 UTC.
Okay, so what is UTC?
It's a time. It's typically 4 or 5 hours faster than Eastern Standard Time, depending on daylight savings.
And so if we change that for daylight savings time, or I'm sorry, to Eastern Standard Time, approximately what time would that have been posted?
Yes, it would be minus 4 hours, so 6:43 Eastern Standard Time, PM.
PM, okay, and that was posted on June 22nd?
That's correct.
And again, I'm gonna look at page 187. What are we looking at here?
It's another photograph of an arm tattoo.
And on page 188 is just the identification and of when that photo was posted to Facebook?
That's correct.
All right, and again, what day was it posted?
On 6/22/2017 at 22:43:08 UTC, which would be 6:43 Eastern Standard.
And on page 190, what are we looking at there?
It's another photograph of arm tattoo.
Okay, and on page 191, what is this?
That's the photo ID information.
Okay, and again, the date and time that was posted?
It's the same. It's posted on 6/22/2017 at 22:43:06 UTC.
Okay, so 6:43.
Yes, 6:43 Eastern Standard Time, PM.
And again, here on page 193, what are we looking at there?
It's another picture of an arm tattoo.
All right, and what date was that posted on?
6/22/2017 at 22:43:02 UTC or 6:43 Eastern Standard Time.
And let me ask you this, when you're looking through these particular photographs of these tattoos, so we have, let's see here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 tattoo photographs, right?
That's correct.
Did any of those 4 tattoo photographs catch your attention with respect to your investigation and the suspects in this case?
Yes.
Can you tell me which photograph it is? What page?
Page 190 is one that caught my attention because I did another search warrant for a Facebook account for Groom and was able to observe a picture posted to him that confirms his tattoo.
Okay, and I'm going to show you just before we go further into that one, People's Proposed Exhibit 47. Do you recognize what you're looking at there?
Yes.
All right, what is that?
This is a one page from a return. God Body Bobby is his Facebook name, which belongs to Groom, and it's a photograph, a shirtless photograph of Groom.
Okay, and did you notice anything when you looked at what Moore posted at 6:40 something on the 22nd, and anything particular in that photograph of Mr. Groom?
Yes, on his left arm, you can clearly identify the tattoos and the pictures posted by Timothy Moore as being the exact same photographs that Groom has.
All right, same tattoos?
Same tattoos on the
Okay.
left arm.
Thank you. I've moved for admission of People's Proposed 47.
No objection for exam purposes.
I don't see the relevance of the fact that the tattoos are the same, Judge. How does that help us decide whether he should be bound over on a charge of homicide?
Well, I think that that's up to her to make the arguments on the connection with the two of them or whatever that she thinks is relevant. Are you objecting
Yes, Your Honor.
for unrelevance?
Yes.
I'll allow it. And Ms. Watt, you don't have any.
No, Your Honor.
Now I want to go back to Exhibit 46 after we get through the tattoo photos. And we're going to now look at page 2 and page 3 of that Facebook return. Can you tell me, did these 2 pages of the return on Timothy Moore II have any investigatory significance to you?
Yes, page 2 is okay if I look at page 3. I don't remember, but so page 2 and page 3 is basically your account information, which shows like IP address, and registered phone numbers associated with the account, hometown, etc.
And can you tell me, on page 3 here, was this account registered to a particular phone number?
Yes,
And can you just read that phone number for me into the record?
513-568-8723.
And at some point, was that number removed from the account, if you know?
Based on the document, yes.
All right, and when would that number have been removed from this account?
The document states on 8/29/2017 at 18:13:24 UTC.
Okay.
Or it would be 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
On August 29th, it was removed,
That's correct,
of 17.
2017.
Okay, now I want to look at some additional photos with you. This looks like it's page 93 and 94 go together. What am I looking at on page 93?
93, you're looking at a dark-skinned male. He has his shirt pulled off, and it looks like he has some like red marks, some injury on his right side.
Okay, and on page 93, can you tell me when that was posted? that on
I,
there?
I can't, it's not,
Dated.
for that.
All right, and on page 103, or what are we looking at there?
Yes, that's Timothy Moore. He has his arm over his head and he's posing with red marks on his right side, shirtless.
And again, on page 105.
105, you can't see a face, but based on the clothing and injury, it appears to be Timothy Moore. He has injury to the right side, scrapes. Looks like he's leaning over on a countertop.
Okay, and can you tell me, do you know when this photo was posted or when individuals started commenting on it?
Yes, the comments from the photo is from the 13th, 6/13/2017.
Okay, so that would be the day after the car accident in Ann Arbor?
That's correct.
And in these comments, did you see any comments that were authored by the user of this Facebook account?
Yes.
All right, and specifically, can you tell me what the comment, so who the user was, and then we can talk about what the text was and what the time was?
Yes, there's a lot of comments, but from the user, Timothy Moore II, he writes on 6/14/2017 at 0020 UTC, yes, broke rib, that's all.
She says, broke rib, that's all.
That's correct.
And I'm going to show you now page 307. And can you tell me on page 307, is there anything that you saw that was important to your investigation on this page?
Yes, it appears to be private messages between Marcia Chase and Timothy Moore.
All right, and do you see anything sent by Timothy Moore on August 19th of 2017?
Yes, he sends what appears to be just a phone number.
And can you tell me that number one more time?
513-568-8723.
Thank you. Think you have any more questions with respect to this? Okay. I want to ask you a few questions about the arrest of Shane Evans. Were you present at the, first off, where did the arrest take place?
44700 Judd Road.
And were you present for at least a portion of that execution of search warrant and arrest?
I was outside the residence when a search warrant, the initial search warrant was conducted until it was deemed safe.
Okay. And ultimately, were you present when Shane Evans was taken into custody?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall approximately what time that would have been?
It would have been around 6 in the morning.
Okay. Do you recall what date that was?
It would have been the date that Detective Sergeant Jordan interviewed him. I don't know offhand. I don't recall.
So the date on that advice of rights would be the date that he was arrested?
That's correct.
All right. And when he was taken into custody at 6 a.m., did he go to a Michigan State Police post?
Yes.
Okay. And was he fed?
He was offered. Eventually, he did eat pizza and stuff.
And did he appear to be coherent when he was in your presence?
Yes.
And did you learn any information from Shane Evans over the course of the investigation with respect to a Chrysler 300?
Yes.
And can you tell me what that was?
Yes. He advised that he drove Keisha Johnson's mother's 300 that she was using to point out Egypt Covington's residence.
Okay, and did you do any follow-up work after you received that information from him?
Yes, he also advised she was from Milan, Michigan, and that her mom lived in Detroit and that the car was her mom's. I was able to locate Akeisha. Oh, and he also said that she moved to Pennsylvania. With that information, I was able to locate Akeisha Johnson from Milan that now resided in Pennsylvania. I was able to identify her mom, Jessie Johnson, and identify at one point she had an older model, a Chrysler 300 registered to her.
All right, did she have that Chrysler 300 registered to her on June 22nd, 2017?
Yes,
Okay, and did you actually go and interview Ms. Johnson over the course of the investigation?
Keisha Johnson, yes,
Okay, thank you, in Pennsylvania?
that's correct.
Okay, and sir, I'm gonna approach with People's Proposed Exhibit 3. You can take it out of the sleeve if need be. Can you tell me, what is that document I'm looking at there?
Yes, ma'am, this is a certified Secretary of State records on the vehicle that was requested from the Secretary of State and provided.
On a Chrysler 300 in June 22nd of 2017 was registered to who?
Jessie Johnson,
Who is the mother of?
Keisha Johnson.
And Your Honor, I'd move for admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 3.
No objection for exam purposes.
No objection.
No objection.
It's admitted for exam purposes.
Okay, just a few more. Now, Sergeant Plummer, did you learn of defendant Chanting Groom having a marital relationship with a woman by the name of Charmaine Johnson?
That's correct.
All right, and was that a relationship that was happening back in June 22nd, 2017?
That's correct.
All right, and did you do any investigation with respect to locating information on Ms. Johnson?
Yes,
All right, and is it true she's deceased?
that's correct.
And specifically, did you have any contact with Beal Properties in Toledo?
I did.
Okay, and I'm going to approach with People's Proposed Exhibit 2. Can you take a moment to look at that document and tell me what that is?
Yes, this is a rental, resident rental application as well as a key return for the address of 401 West Bancroft
401 West Bancroft?
in Toledo.
Okay, and are these, does this have a declaration of business records that's notarized that was provided with these records?
That's correct.
Okay, Your Honor, I'd move for admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 2.
No objection.
No objection for exam purposes.
No objection. It's admitted.
And I want to just briefly, on what I think is page 3 of this exhibit, what does this, what am I looking at here?
This would be a resident rental application, which would have been filled out by Charmaine Johnson on 3/17 of 16.
Okay, and in that residential rental application, was there a phone number listed for Charmaine Johnson?
Yes,
And can you tell me what that number was?
yes, 567-315-7414.
And that rental property, just one more time, that I'm sorry, long day. At what date was this application signed?
3/17/16.
And can you tell me what date the key was returned?
Yes, the key return indicates that it was returned on August 2nd, 2017. Or I'm sorry, August 3rd, 2017.
And again, that address is 401 West Bancroft.
That's correct.
Thank you. Permission to publish, Judge. Judge, I just need 1 second.
You're good.
Sir, with respect to Arthur Richardson, we've heard testimony of the course of the last day and today about him being incarcerated at Stryker in Ohio.
That's correct.
And did you do any follow-up on that to confirm that he was incarcerated at that time?
Yes.
All right, and I'm going to approach with People's Proposed Exhibit 11. Can you tell me, what am I looking at here?
Yes, this is certified jail records that show that Arthur Richardson was incarcerated during the time of the homicide.
And specifically, I'm looking at the second to the last page here. Does it give you the date that Mr. Richardson was booked into the jail?
Yes,
And what date was that?
6/7/2017.
And does it give a release date for Mr. Richardson?
It does.
And what was that?
11/14/2017.
And move for admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 11.
No objection for exam purposes.
No objection.
No objection.
I'll admit it.
And sir, did you receive back the report from Special Agent Gavin with respect to the Google account and the 2 phone numbers that were down in Toledo and then returned to Toledo on the night of June 22nd, 2017?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell me, when you got that report from Special Agent Gavin back, what point, was there anything specific that you were interested in?
Yes, location before, during, and after the 22nd, around the time of what I believe was the time of the homicide.
Okay, and when you looked at Special Agent's report, Special Agent Gavin's report, did you notice anything substantial with respect to the address of 401 West Bancroft?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell me what that was?
Yes, his pattern shows that after Arthur Richardson was incarcerated, the phone spends the majority of its time there. Also, around, I don't remember.
Right, I'm going to object. That is not what the exhibit showed. The exhibit showed 36% of the Google contacts were at that location. That's not a majority.
Fair enough.
Sir, did Special Agent,
I'm sorry, 37%.
I was
37%
just
of
gonna
the
look at my
time,
notes.
37% of the time between June 8th and August 31st?
Yeah.
That was 30% of the locations, is that or in the area of 401 Bancroft?
Yes,
Okay, and that address was significant to you, why?
because 401 West Bancroft is located southwest corner of Horton and Bancroft.
Okay, and that, what I'm showing you there, and that's People's Proposed Exhibit 48, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that just a map showing the area of 401 West Bancroft?
That's correct.
And I'd move for admission of People's Proposed Exhibit 48.
No objection.
None for exam purposes.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Okay, and I'm almost done, I promise. I want to show you People's Proposed Exhibit 49A and 49B. Can you tell me what I'm looking at there, sir?
Yes, it's a map which marks 671 Dorr Street in Toledo, Ohio.
And was that address significant to you for any reason?
Yes, that's Nicole Dillard's address. And the report provided shows that both phone numbers were accessing tower that covers that address on the 22nd at the same time.
Okay, and that's prior to those two devices moving up 75 towards Michigan?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's 49A, and in 49B, is that just kind of a close-up or a zoom out of 49A?
That's correct.
All right. Move for admission of people's proposed exhibits 49A and 49B.
None for exam purposes.
No objection.
Admitted. Oh,
I just, 1 second. I never like to sit down. My officer in charge, it's hard. I do have a few more questions. So I want to ask you, when you become the officer in charge on this case, did you get any Google information from Van Buren?
Yes.
All right, and what was the extent of that information?
It was a small geofence on the crime scene for a very limited period of time on the 22nd, 23rd.
Okay, and was the Google account associated with Arthur Richardson's phone located in those search warrant returns?
That's correct.
Okay, and did you also get this video from the Citgo gas station?
Yes.
All right, and did you review that video as part of your investigation?
Yes.
All right, and between the two of those, when you're moving forward on your investigation, was it important to see if you could draw any relationship between this vehicle and this Google account?
Yes.
And were you able to do so?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions.
Ms. Joseph.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, during the course of your investigation of this case, you did confirm that Mr. Timothy Moore was in a car accident on June 12, 2017, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And just because someone posts on Facebook that they're fine, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not injured, right?
I would assume if someone says they're fine, they're uninjured.
Okay, all right. You searched Mr. Moore's home after his arrest, right?
I did not.
Okay, someone that you oversaw as officer in charge searched Mr. Moore's home after his arrest, right?
Correct.
Okay, and there was no evidence found in his home that tied to him to the crime, right?
That's correct.
Let's talk about the geofence. So it sounds to me from your testimony a few minutes ago that there was a geofence requested, but it was just for a small period of time, and that was done back in 2017, right?
Are you referring to Van Buren?
Yes.
That they did, I don't believe it was until 2019 in July, I believe that they did it.
And was there ever any reasoning given why they only asked for that 4 or 5 minute time frame for the geofence?
No.
Now, did the geofence box that you submitted and got some returns on, did that include other homes in the area?
Yes.
And you've indicated that some of the returns were neighbors to Ms. Covington, right?
That's correct.
Did you interview the neighbors whose devices returned on the geofence?
No.
You testified that you plotted, I think you testified you plotted the neighbors' homes after receiving the information from the geofence. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have any specific training in plotting?
Not officially, no.
Okay. In terms of Google searches, you wouldn't receive information about what a person actually types into a Google search, right?
I receive, I guess it depends. It has I very well could. It would say what was searched. Yes.
Let me ask a better question. Long day. If you, in the course of your investigation in this case, did you receive information about what a person searched in Google?
Yes.
Okay. Snapchat, you indicated that you issued a search warrant. When was that issued for Snapchat?
I don't recall the exact day.
Okay, was it sometime in 2020 or 2019?
I believe it would have been in 2020, probably the fall timeframe. It very well could have been early 2021.
Okay, and it was after you became involved in this investigation, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so no law enforcement prior to your involvement had sent a search warrant to Snapchat, right?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and everyone was involved in the investigation was aware of the Snapchat at the beginning of this case, right?
That's
back in 2017. You also, it's my understanding you requested a geofence around Kenny Mihalik's house. Is that right?
That's correct.
Did you receive any returns on that?
I believe so, yes.
Did you in turn submit kind of that second step to the Google geofence to get additional device returns?
I don't recall.
You've seen the gas station video today, and I'm sure watched it previously. Did you watch the gas station footage after midnight?
Yes.
Did you look at or investigate any of the other cars that are shown from the hours of 11 to midnight?
No.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. Yes, the blue truck and the Chrysler 300.
Okay. So let me ask some more questions then. On 11:23 p.m., a silver truck shows on the gas station video. Did you investigate that silver truck?
No.
On 11:27, a black car drives down Hall Road towards Miss Covington's house. Did you investigate that car?
No.
On 11:53, 2 minutes after the blue truck is seen, another car drives down Hall Road towards Miss Covington's house. Did you investigate that car?
No.
The number starting with 513 and ending in the last four digits of 8732. Was it determined that phone was a flip phone type model?
I did not determine that.
Okay. And you did receive more than one Facebook return for a different Facebook account that you believe belongs to Mr. Moore, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And the cell phone number on that other Facebook return, I'm sorry, strike that. The other Facebook return that you received that you believe belongs to Mr. Moore, it has a different cell phone number listed on it, right?
I don't recall.
If I showed you the record, would that refresh your recollection?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
It's just it's the third. Page 30. Which page is it? Or
Page
is it
30.
the Tim Moore, the second?
It's, no, solo.
So they go, thanks.
If you can read that to yourself and not out loud. So does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay, so just to be clear, the other Facebook account that you believe belongs to Mr. Moore has a different number associated with it, right?
That's correct.
It actually has two phone numbers associated with it, right?
That's correct.
And neither of those phone numbers are the phone number ending in 8732 that we've discussed today, right?
That's correct.
Okay. It's true that there were no signs of forced entry in Miss Covington's home, right?
From the photographs provided by Van Buren Township, no.
And had there been some signs of forced entry or a break-in, is that something law enforcement would typically take photos of?
Typically, yes.
Thank you. During the course of this investigation, there were many tips about who may have committed this crime, right?
That's correct.
In fact, there was a tip that I believe you were told that there was a Jackie Elkins who shot Miss Covington and there were 3 other people with him. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you interview Jackie Elkins?
No.
You also received some tips about a Malcolm. Did you interview or investigate Malcolm?
I don't recall the tip, but I did not interview Malcolm.
What about an individual named Mike?
I don't believe I've interviewed a Mike.
So let me make this clear. So Mr. Evans, during his statement, indicated some things about a Malcolm, a Mike, a Juan, and a Johnny. Did you investigate any of those individuals?
We're still investigating this case, yes.
Okay. So did you interrogate a Malcolm?
No.
What about Mike?
No.
Juan?
No.
Johnny?
No.
Okay. You also got a tip that there was a woman who had just gotten out of prison that Ms. Covington had some significant disagreement with. And she had just gotten out of prison a few days before Ms. Covington's death. Did you investigate that woman?
I don't recall that tip, but I didn't investigate the woman. No.
Of course, you got quite a few tips also about Kenny, right? Kenny
Yes.
Mihalik?
Yes.
And is it true that his alibi was that he was at a few bars in Belleville and he left at either 10:30 or 11:30?
I've never talked to Kenny Mihalik.
Okay. So in the course of your investigation, you've never determined it was the right time to interview him?
I've attempted. He did not want to talk to me.
Okay. Understand. Okay. Are you aware that Kenny was arrested previously for assaulting Miss Covington?
Yes.
Are you aware that Kenny and Miss Covington got into an argument close in time to this incident about a Tina Fitzsimmons?
Yes.
And Miss Fitzsimmons was interviewed, right?
I did not interview Ms. Simmons.
Okay. Are you aware that Miss Fitzsimmons and Kenny began a dating relationship 2 weeks after Miss Covington's death?
I don't know when, but I do know that they started dating, yes.
Okay. And so you've never investigated Miss Fitzsimmons as a suspect?
No.
Isn't it true that just days before Miss Covington's death, Miss Covington and Kenny were texting each other and arguing back and forth?
I don't recall.
Kenny's home was searched, right?
Not by me.
You did not search this home?
No.
Okay. Are you aware that multiple handguns, including a 9mm, were found in Mr. Mihalik's home?
Yes.
And you received a tip about a trench in Mr. Mihalik's parents' yard where a gun could easily have been buried because that trench had been open for 3 weeks right around the time of Miss Covington's death. You received that tip, right?
I don't recall.
And Miss Covington was texting Kenny Mihalik just a few hours before what you estimate is her time of death, right?
I don't recall.
Is it your understanding that earlier in this investigation, some evidence was mishandled?
Yes.
And as a result of potential mishandling or concern over potential mishandling, there were a lot of officers involved who submitted DNA samples, right?
I don't know if that was due to any mishandling of evidence, why DNA from officers was submitted. That would have been from before I got the investigation.
Understandable. So But there were a lot of the officers involved did submit DNA samples, which were then compared to the evidence in this case, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And Ms. Covington had 2 phones. It was determined during your investigation that she had 2 phones, a work phone and a personal phone, right?
That's correct.
And isn't it true that her personal phone was recovered at the scene of the crime, but it was accidentally erased when detectives tried to use her own dead fingers to unlock the phone?
That's incorrect.
That's incorrect?
Yes.
So was the phone erased?
It was not her personal phone.
Okay, so whether it was her work phone or her personal phone, it was a phone that was believed to belong to her, right?
Yes.
Okay, and was that phone that belonged to her, whether work or personal, was that phone erased?
Yes.
And of course, that phone could potentially contain important information about this investigation in this case, right?
I don't know.
You don't know whether her phone could have clues about what she was or wasn't doing that evening?
I'm not speaking in hypotheticals. I'd have to review. I don't know.
Okay, all right. Of course, the other phones in this case do, but hers don't. Okay, so nonetheless, her
Miss
phone.
Joseph, stop. Miss Joseph.
I will move on. No search warrant for Ms. Covington's Google, Facebook, or Icloud was issued until March of 2019. Is that correct?
I don't know. I wasn't involved in the case before that this summer.
Okay. Did you issue any search warrants for Ms. Covington's Google, Facebook, or Icloud accounts?
I did so many search warrants. I don't recall what was done. I don't believe I identified a Google account for her. The iCloud, I was able to access her iPad and get into her iCloud account and review that. And as far as her Facebook, I know I did social media. I don't know what social media platform a search warrant was submitted on.
Okay. In the course of your investigation in the last 10 months or so, did you receive the couch cushion that was allegedly used in this incident in property or evidence?
Yes.
Okay. And is that couch cushion still in property or evidence?
It is in Michigan State Police property.
Okay. Now, it's my understanding that on October 27th, 2020, Ms. Covington's brother and her significant other requested a meeting with you, right?
I'm not sure the
I'm
exact.
sorry, what was the date?
October 27th, 2020.
Okay.
I don't know the exact date, but yes, they did request a meeting.
Okay, if I showed you your report, would that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Here you go. Sorry for my highlighting.
No, you're good.
You could read that to yourself and not out loud. Just look up at me once, or if your recollection is refreshed about when or if the Ms. Covington's brother and his significant other requested a meeting with you.
That's on page 2, which isn't included.
Oh, are you sure it's not? I think it's double-sided printing.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Save the environment, a lot of paper in this case.
Yes, ma'am. October 27th.
Okay, 2020. So they requested a meeting with you, and you met with them, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and they wanted to give you, it was your understanding that they wanted to give you some information about the case, but you actually told them that at that point in the investigation, you believed you had enough information, right?
I was still organizing the files that I've got with the amount of paperwork. So at that point, I had so much, so I have to go back. I had to go back to get the other information.
Okay, but isn't it true that you actually requested that they limit the information that they share with you because you didn't want it to take away from your current investigative route?
I didn't want them investigating and doing their own investigation. And there was a lot of tips, and obviously stuff comes in at that point. I had a lot of information that I was sorting through. So at that point, I asked it to be limited until later on. Obviously, this is a very much still open case.
So on October 27, 2020, you were still sorting through the case, but a week later, you arrested Mr. Moore.
I don't know the exact date I arrested Mr. Moore, but perhaps.
If I told you it was November 5th, 2020, would that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. So after you were investigating the case for about 4 months, you actually asked that individuals not give you information because you had a suspect and you were about to make an arrest. Is that fair to say?
That's incorrect. That's not fair to say at all.
They did try to give you some additional suspects though, right? A Charles Cox, John Casey, Ken Toney.
I'm sure, yes. I don't know the exact names.
Okay, did you investigate a Charles Cox?
Not yet, no.
What about James Casey?
No.
Ken Toney?
No.
You did execute an arrest warrant for first-degree murder charges against Art Richardson though, right?
Yes.
And that arrest warrant was issued without any investigation as to whether he was incarcerated or not, right?
No, that's not right.
Okay, so you did investigate whether he was incarcerated or not
Yes.
prior to issuing the arrest warrant?
Yes, I requested intel from the state of Ohio. They provided all the intel they could. That was not included with information that Ohio provided to me. Unfortunately, since it's out of state, I have to go with what they give me at the time.
Okay. He was ultimately discovered to have been incarcerated at that time, and his first-degree murder charges were dismissed, right?
That's correct.
You interviewed Mr. Groom, and Mr. Groom told you that he was selling marijuana in June of 2017 and that he didn't need to buy any marijuana or steal any marijuana, right?
I believe so, yes.
Judge, I have nothing further for this witness.
Mr. Goldstein.
Detective Plummer, excuse me. You got involved in this case. Phone number starting 419, ending 4913 had already been identified. Is that correct?
I don't ever remember hearing that number.
If I told you it was the number for Arthur Richardson, would that help your memory?
That's incorrect. That's not Arthur Richardson's number. I don't believe, from what my memory, I would have to look at documentation.
What was the number that you gave him?
I thought it's 493. I'm sorry. Did I say one? I'm sorry. It's 4931.
That's
I'm sorry.
correct.
206-4931.
I get numerically dyslexic.
That's okay.
That had already been identified, correct?
Yes.
And through the investigation, as a result of the documents that you were shown today, you identified a phone number belonging to a woman whose last name was Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Groom's wife.
Correct.
Did you attempt to identify a phone number associated with Mr. Groom?
Yes.
Did you find any phone number registered, any phone registered to Mr. Groom?
No.
How long have you been a police officer?
Over 8 years.
And how long have you been a detective?
4 or 5 years.
And in the course of your experience, is it unusual for people to use phones that are not registered to them?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that
Is
question?
it unusual to find people using phones that are not registered to them?
No.
And that would mean, in this case, that if Mr. Groom wanted to make a phone call, he'd have to use a phone belonging to somebody other than himself, or a phone registered to somebody other than himself.
Can you say that question again?
If Mr. Groom, during the relevant time period, let's say 2017, wanted to make a phone call, he'd have to use a phone registered to someone other than himself because he didn't have one registered to him.
Not that I could locate.
And you identified through the geofence, it was identified that the 4931 number came up in the location around the crime scene.
Within the crime scene, yes.
Did you find any evidence that the phone registered to Miss Johnson came up in any of those locations?
I'm sorry,
The crime scene.
on the geofence that I did for
Yes.
the crime scene? No.
Anywhere around Judd Road, Hull Road, any of those locations?
Yes.
Where?
On Hall Road in front of the crime scene.
The Johnson phone.
Yes.
I thought it was a minute ago you said no, that you didn't find it.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's another Johnson. We're talking about two different
I'm
Johnsons.
talking about the Johnson.
You're talking about Charmaine Johnson?
Yes.
No, nothing with Charmaine Johnson.
Okay. So the phone registered to Shandon Groom's wife doesn't show up on the geofence anywhere around the crime scene.
That's correct.
Now, based on the evidence produced by the FBI agent and presented to you as part of this investigation, you learned that the phone registered to Mr. Richardson, the 4931 phone, prior to the 7th of June, had hits at the address where Mr. Groom was residing, correct?
Are you talking about 401 West Bancroft?
Yes.
I would have to look at my plotting.
Well, I think it's an exhibit. I mean, okay, you were in the courtroom.
Are you talking about the Neil Gavin,
Yes.
Amy Gavin's report? Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
it was right up there on the
Yep.
screen, right?
Yes, sir.
So prior to the time Mr. Richardson went to jail, there was evidence that the phone, or the Google account hid from that location.
Correct.
And after he went to jail.
That's correct.
And there was evidence that that Google account and that phone hit at the location of his mother's house prior to the time he went to jail.
Arthur Richardson's mother?
Yes.
Correct.
And after also.
Correct.
Now, part of your job as the officer in charge of the case is to marshal the physical evidence. Is that correct?
I guess I don't know what.
I mean, as officer in charge of the case, you're in charge of the case.
That's correct.
Okay. And so whether you yourself sees physical evidence or one of the other officers does, it's your job to log that and keep track of it. Is that correct?
I don't necessarily log it. It might be one of my assisting detectives that log it, but I keep track of it. Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us, since we haven't seen any in the last 2 days, whether any physical evidence relevant to this investigation was seized from Mr. Groom or from his residence?
No.
At the time that Mr. Groom was arrested, and any searches that might have been conducted regarding Mr. Groom, were any weapons found?
I don't believe so.
Now, in addition to being in charge of the evidence, I mean the physical evidence, you're also responsible for making sure that reports are written about the activities of your investigating team. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Whether you write the specific sections of the report or not, it's your job is to get them all together and put them in some usable form. Is that?
That's correct.
Ms. Shackelford and Your Honor, I'm going to be asking this officer or this detective some questions about the police report. I can help
What's
you.
the supplemental number?
It's supplement, well, it's August 31st, 2020, supplemental 0003 and 0002. Specifically with 003, I'm going to be asking about page 1 of 14 and page 8 of 14. May I approach her?
Yeah, all right.
Sir, let me show you what I believe is a part of the police report that was prepared and supervised by you in this matter. You recognize it?
Yes.
Okay, and it does say down at the bottom, investigated by, it's got your name, correct?
That's correct.
And it also has Detective Street's name.
That's correct.
Okay. But do you know who wrote the section at the top where it says footage reviewed.
This whole report would have been authored by Detective Sergeant Sean Street.
Were you present when Detective Street testified either yesterday or today? I think he talked about both yesterday and today, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And do you recall him being asked whether he reviewed the footage of the video from the Citgo gas station?
Yes,
And do you recall him being asked whether he was able to determine anything about the occupants of the car? I'm sorry, the blue truck.
yes,
And you recall him saying he really couldn't, he could just see there were a couple of people in there. He couldn't tell whether they were male or female, black or white, young or old, etc.
correct.
Would you read for us, please, starting right where I have my finger, what he wrote in his report?
So Judge, I am going to object. He's asking an officer who didn't author a report to impeach another officer with that officer's report. I don't,
Absolutely. It's a prior inconsistent statement, Your Honor.
yeah,
But it's not an inconsistent statement by him.
No, he's going to read what Detective Street wrote in the report.
which would have been an appropriate question for Detective Street.
That might be, Your Honor, but it's still a prior inconsistent
Well,
statement.
it's a document. Here's my problem with it. I agree with Ms. Shackelford, but I think that the better way, I mean, the document speaks for itself.
I'll put in the document.
You know, if he, and so just admit the document and then you can make your argument with the document.
The only problem, Your Honor, is that generally police reports are not admissible. And that's why I was doing it this way rather than admitting the report itself.
And I agree, they're not admissible.
But the problem is he doesn't know. He doesn't know the answer to your question. It wasn't him that he says, I didn't write that on there. So he's assuming that, that Detective Street did. So he can't speak for Detective Street. That's the problem with your argument.
No, Judge, that may go to the weight of it. It doesn't go to the admissibility of it. It's part of this investigation.
If your argument is that that's Detective Street's handwriting and this officer can't verify that, it doesn't just go to the weight, it goes to the entire issue.
I'll move on, Your Honor. This is supplement 0002, page 6 of 8. You recognize it?
Yes, this is a report that was authored by me.
By you?
Yes.
Okay. Did you author the entire page?
Yes.
Okay. Where it says down here that there was review of the footage of the video. You see down here,
Where-
there's 2340 hours, 2343 hours. Okay, did you write this portion of it?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the entries that you placed in here under 2343 hours is that the vehicle appeared to be occupied by a black male passenger and a lighter skinned male driver. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Does that refresh your memory as to what you saw?
Yes.
So it suggests, does it not, that there was clear enough viewing on the video to be able to make some determination as to the occupants of that vehicle?
From me, yes. I believe so.
I'm asking only for you.
Yes.
Since you're not Detective Street. I have nothing further.
Ms. Watt?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
You've indicated on direct that you were present on the day that Mr. Evans was taken into custody?
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay, and do you know approximately what time you arrived at the residence?
I arrived as the SWAT team was executing the search warrant.
Okay, what time was that? What time was the arrival?
I don't know.
Okay. You have no recollection of the time at all?
It was very early morning, still dark outside
Okay.
when I arrived.
Okay, would it be prior to the 6 a.m. time and during which Mr. Evans was actually taken into custody?
I don't recall.
Okay,
Exact time.
can I ask you this? When you arrived at that location, you arrived with the SWAT team, correct?
I arrived after the SWAT team. I didn't go with, I followed them essentially.
Okay, but you didn't arrive at the residence with them. You came after they arrived.
That's correct.
And do you know how long they had been there?
Several minutes before
Okay.
my arrival.
And then when you arrive at that location, what is the SWAT team doing?
They are still searching, deeming the house and property safe. I'm in my vehicle near the road.
Okay, and how long do they do that?
I don't recall.
Okay. And then at some point, does SWAT make entry into the residence?
Yes, while I'm waiting there, when I arrive, they're already entered in the residence and doing their search and making it safe.
Okay, so before taking Mr. Evans into custody, they arrive at the residence. You're not there, correct?
That's correct.
You come after, correct?
Correct.
They make entry. The SWAT makes entry, correct?
Correct.
They search the residence, correct? You just said they searched. to make
Just
sure
until it was
secure.
safe. Correct.
Okay, and what does that entail, searching to make sure it's safe?
Making sure there's no people hiding or nothing that can hurt investigators on the property after. Yeah, essentially that's just it.
Okay, so they have to basically walk around the house, look around, look in bedrooms, look in various parts of the home. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Is Mr. Evans still there when they're searching? Or
One-
has he
one-
been transported to the station?
Not until after it was deemed safe for me to enter the residence.
Okay, so they do a search of the residence, correct?
Yes.
They at some point deem it safe, correct?
Correct.
You don't know how long that took, correct?
It couldn't have been more than 20, 30 minutes.
Okay, so 20, 30 minutes, they're looking and searching and deeming it safe, correct?
Correct.
And then you come inside, correct?
Correct.
And what do you do when you come inside?
I make contact with Mr. Evans, who was sitting on the couch. I then lead him out to a state trooper who had arrived on scene to have him transported back to Metro South.
Okay, and when he's transported back to Metro South, do you accompany him, Mr. Evans?
I am in my own vehicle. I'm not accompanying him.
Okay, and when he's booked into Metro South, do you go in with him to be booked?
He was placed in a holding cell before my arrival.
Okay, so he's placed in a holding cell, and then you arrive afterwards, correct?
That's correct.
Was he booked prior to being placed in the holding cell or after being placed in the holding cell? When I say booked, printed, name taken, et cetera, was that done prior to being put in the holding cell or after being put in the holding cell?
We don't do any of that at Metro South. That's not until he was placed at the Detroit Detention Center.
Okay.
The Michigan Department of Corrections would actually take the fingerprints and do all that. He's essentially just, his shoes are taken, any like belts, stuff of that matter, and then he's
Okay, well,
placed
that's
in a holding
booking
cell.
though, because you have to make sure, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Are you describing a procedure? And I'm using the term booking, but a procedure that you go through before you put the person in the cell?
That's correct.
Okay. That happens before the person's put in the cell, correct?
That's correct.
Were you present for that?
I don't believe so.
Do you have contact with Mr. Evans after he's placed in the cell?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the nature of that contact?
I probably asked him if he wanted a drink or something of that sort.
Okay. And is it your testimony that you offered him something to drink and something to eat?
I know I at least at that point offered him something to drink.
Something to drink?
Yes.
Did you make any assessments or ascertain whether or not he needed any medication or whether he had any physical ailments? Did you do that?
I did not know.
Besides offering Mr. Evans something to drink, did you have any other contact with him?
Yes, I was present. I was with Mr. Evans the whole day after that point.
Were you present when he was taken into an interview room to be interrogated?
Yes, I was present.
How long had Mr. Evans been in the holding cell prior to being taken into the interview room, if you know?
2 hours, perhaps.
So let me make sure I understand this. Is your testimony that Mr. Evans, and let me start over. Can you put on the record the date that Mr. Evans was taken into custody?
I'd have to look at my report for the exact
Do
date.
you have your report in front of you to look at it?
I don't believe this isn't that information.
Okay. You don't remember the date that you went to Mr. Evans' home?
I would have to, there's so many dates, I'd have to look at some documentation.
And I wrote it down. I thought you said it.
You want me to assist you by
Yes,
showing the
you're
advice of
faster
rights?
than me. Yes, thank you.
Let's move.
Yes, it would have been this isn't correct.
All right, let's try this. This is another admitted exhibit from,
Okay, that's the 16th of December 2020. That
Okay,
sounds
December.
more correct.
Thank you. And so it's your testimony that Mr. Evans was arrested on December 16th, transported to MSP at about, you said you left at his home at about 6 in the morning? 6 a.m.?
Around there, yes.
And so if he was interrogated a couple of hours later, he would have been interrogated on December 16th at 8:00 a.m.
He was interviewed by me and my partner at that time.
At that
around,
time, 8 o'clock?
it may have been anywhere. It was in the morning, shortly after. I don't know, 8, 9, sometime in there.
And when you say he was interviewed by you and your partner, who is your partner?
Detective Sergeant Street.
And were you the officer that took him out of the holding cell and put him in the interview room?
I don't recall if I was the one that physically did that.
And in the video, I see the back of the head. Were you the officer with Detective Street that is depicted in the video?
That's correct.
Okay.
You got your best sentence.
Can I have just 1 second, Your Honor?
Absolutely.
I have no further questions.
Anything else, Ms. Shackleton?
you were asked some questions by Mr. Moore's defense counsel with respect to separate Google accounts. Over the course of your investigation, were you able to locate multiple Facebook accounts associated with Mr. Moore?
That's correct.
Okay. And were the account, the Solo Dolo, and I know there was another account that was related to a tattoo business, is that right?
That's correct.
And did Mr. Moore give the investigators in this case those Facebook accounts?
No.
All right, now the account Tim Moore II, the one that I admitted as an exhibit that shows photos of his injuries where he says it's just a broken rib, photos of tattoos, and where he tells people what his phone number is. Did Mr. Moore give you that Facebook account?
I don't know if he gave it to me personally, but he gave it to law enforcement.
Thank you. And you heard Detective Amador testify earlier specifically about that account?
And I'm going to object, Judge. This is, Detective Amador already testified. Speaking about his testimony here and asking this witness about his testimony is inappropriate.
That's fine. I'll withdraw the question, Judge. And did you get, over the course of this investigation, either from what you picked up from Van Buren Township and what you had on your own, did you get a fair amount of tips on this case?
Yes.
Okay. When I say a fair amount, hundreds maybe?
I'm still getting a lot of
Okay.
tips, yes.
And you were asked some questions about the firearms that were recovered during a search warrant at Kenny Mihalik's residence. You recall that question?
Yes.
Were those firearms submitted to Michigan State Crime Laboratory for analysis?
I believe the 9mm would have been.
Okay, and that's because there was a shell casing from the scene?
That's correct.
All right, and was that firearm excluded?
That's correct.
Okay. And Miss Covington's personal phone, was that phone ever recovered?
It was not.
Okay, and was that phone number, that 7090, the one that we saw that was basically left somewhere until it eventually quit communicating with towers?
That's correct.
Okay. And that would have been in the area of South Huron River Drive and 275?
That's correct.
And you were asked some questions about Miss Johnson and whether or not her phone pinged in the area. And you started to answer, well, yes, Miss Johnson's phone did ping there. Are there two Miss Johnsons in this case?
Yes.
Okay, who's the first Miss Johnson?
We have Charmaine Johnson.
Okay, and Charmaine Johnson would be the deceased spouse of Mr. Groom.
That's correct.
Who's the other Johnson?
Keisha Johnson,
And who's Keisha Johnson?
the ex-girlfriend of Shane Evans.
Okay, and so you said there were pings, or for lack of a better term, there were Google locations from her phone that you did recover?
I didn't recover her physical phone.
Did you do a geolocation or a Google search warrant on that device?
I did not on that device per se.
Okay, tell me how you got there.
I did a geofence search warrant on 44700 Judd Road for the 22nd of June 2017.
All right, which is Shane Evans' residence.
That's correct.
And did you got a device at that location?
Yes.
All right. And then did you do those follow-up Google search warrants or requests that you discussed earlier in your testimony?
Correct.
All right. And did you get information back on that?
Correct.
Okay. And that phone, what did you testify to on cross?
It pings on Hall Road in front of the crime scene.
Okay. And is that in close timing to the time that Arthur Richardson's phone is at that location?
Yes.
And do you know what the relationship was between Shandon Groom and Arthur Richardson?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. We didn't cover anything like that on cross-examination.
I think that's incorrect, Your Honor. Defense counsel specifically asked Detective Plummer about these locations of 401 Bancroft and the 14th Street address, and I think that the relationship between the parties is certainly relevant with respect to that line of questioning.
The line of questioning was with regard to the phones, with regard to the Google account.
I'm gonna let her ask it.
Can you repeat that question?
Are you aware of whether or not there was a relationship between Shandon Groom and Arthur Richardson?
Yes.
Or what was it?
I was advised by Shane that he had knew him since they were little.
Shandon Groom told you that?
Shane Evans.
Okay, no, but did Arthur Richardson also talk to you about that?
I'm sorry, you're talking about
Shandon Groom and Richardson.
Rich. I'm sorry. Yes. Arthur Richardson said that they grew up together.
And Groom and Moore, well, all of the defendants were arrested how many years after this homicide occurred?
Over 3.
In your training and experience as an officer, have you been an officer in charge on homicides before?
Yes.
And other assaultive or violent crimes?
Yes.
Generally, do people who've been involved in crimes keep murder weapons or whatever else at their house for several years after the crime was committed?
No.
And of all those other tips that you received over the course of the investigation, either from things that you collected from Van Buren Township or things you've received since you took over the case and became the officer in charge, were any of those other tips, did you get any CODIS hits on their DNA being on the Christmas lights that the decedent's arms were
Objection,
wrapped in?
Judge, this is outside the scope of the questioning. This is the first time anything about CODIS has been raised by anyone, and it's on redirect.
Your Honor, there was extensive cross-examination to the witness about all of these other tips and all of these other people that weren't investigated. So I think me asking a question as to which would explain perhaps why all of these other people weren't investigated is certainly relevant and within the scope of the cross-examination. It's one question.
Judge, tips are different than going into all of the CODIS. I mean, that opens up a whole other line of questioning from me that wouldn't have otherwise been raised if she didn't ask this.
Give me the question again.
I asked if of all of those other tips that he received and all of those other names over the course of the investigation, if he received any CODIS hits from their DNA being on the Christmas lights the decedent's arms were wrapped in.
What about amending it to, was there any CODIS hits on it? Because your question is, if he ran any of those names.
No, Judge, I'm just asking if there were any other CODIS hits on those Christmas lights that involved any of the names in any of the tips that he received.
Judge, I raised nothing about CODIS. That's completely outside of the scope, completely.
Judge, she doesn't have to say the
No,
word.
but you raised names, some of which are police officers, by the way. And so I'm not sure. Go ahead and answer it.
There was only one CODIS hit for the case.
Okay, and that CODIS hit was for the defendant, Timothy Moore.
That's correct.
No further questions.
Ms. Joseph.
Did you run all of the names of all the tips that you received through CODIS?
CODIS is a database that forensic science for the state police it run. I don't deal with that. The only thing I could do is get direct samples, but it's a database that I don't have access to that's run by the lab.
So you may not be the one who runs it through CODIS, of course, I understand that. But you never submitted those tips and those names into anything about this case, did you? My question is, MSP, who runs CODIS, they wouldn't know that any of those people were tips or listed as suspects, right?
If any of those names are in CODIS, it would have been ran against the DNA recovered in this case.
Okay, and how would MSP find out about those tips and suspects, especially if you're telling people, I don't want any information about those people?
Okay.
Well, I'm going to object to the question, Your Honor, because I think it's argumentative.
Well, actually, your objection is that she's mischaracterizing his testimony. That's the better objection. But I'll say that that's not what he said. That's not what he testified to. So rephrase your question.
I'll rephrase the question. There were some tips that you received, and at some point during your investigation, you indicated that you needed time to sort out the investigation. Is that proper characterization of what you testified to?
That's more accurate, yes.
Okay, and so those names, those wouldn't be inputted into anything in this case, would they?
That's not necessarily true. If any of those names are in CODIS, they would have been ran against.
You don't insert names into CODIS. CODIS has a database. You insert the DNA or whatever, and it makes hits over what's already existing. You don't add names into the system.
That's correct.
Okay, you testified that the firearms found in Kenny Mihalik's house, they were all eliminated from this case. Is that true?
There's only one weapon used, which was a 9mm.
Okay.
So anything that's not 9mm wouldn't be relevant to this case.
Okay, so isn't it actually true that a Walther P99C 9mm was recovered, and it was determined that it likely belonged to a Kenny Mihalik, and that firearm could not be eliminated or identified as being fired?
I don't recall. I know speaking to the lab, they would say, no. What they put in a report is usually something along the lines like that, means it's not a match.
And there was only one report done about the ballistics on the firearms recovered in connection to Kenny Mihalik, right?
I don't know how many ballistic tests the lab has done offhand.
Okay. If I showed you a copy of the report from Michigan State Police regarding the firearms, would that refresh your recollection as to whether those firearms were eliminated or identified as to? May I approach the witness, John?
Yes.
Presented with the actual lab.
I thought this would be a little bit quicker instead of having to read the
Well,
report.
that's
But if you
okay.
have it there,
I can deal with it and you can read it out.
Okay. All right. Sorry for my writing
No, you're
on
good.
that report again. Okay, so isn't it true that it wasn't that the 9mm was eliminated, it's that it couldn't be identified or eliminated?
I'd
Right.
have to see the actual lab report to
Okay,
say that.
all right, let me get you the lab report then.
You can use this if you want.
Okay, that would probably be a lot faster. Oh, thanks. Yeah, you can.
I've got some underlining on it.
That's fine. So is it true that the firearm could not be identified or eliminated?
It was inconclusive.
Inconclusive. Okay, so that doesn't mean that it was eliminated, correct?
No, could not be identified or eliminated.
Okay, so eliminated does not mean inconclusive, right? Those mean two different things in terms of MSP lab reports, right?
The lab report says inconclusive on it.
Okay, so it's inconclusive, okay. And during the course of your investigation, it was determined that Kenny Mihalik had a lot of guns in his possession, right?
I don't know.
Do you know that he had a gun safe at his home?
I don't recall. I never was in his home, but referring to other reports, I believe there was mention of a gun safe.
I think we're all set, thank you.
Mr. Goldstein? Ms. Watt?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mrs. Shackelford?
I just have one or two questions here. So this laboratory report, we see here that the firearm, this Walther Model P99C, was tested against a fired cartridge casing, right?
That's correct.
And the result was inconclusive. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did the report go on to say that the individual characteristics do not display agreement?
That's correct.
And did it also go on to say that the characters present suggest that it was fired in a different firearm?
That's correct.
Okay, no further questions.
We have nothing further, Judge.
Anything else? All right, Sergeant, you're all set. Any other witnesses? Ms. Shackelford,
No other witnesses, Your Honor, but if we are,
go ahead.
if we're coming back on Thursday, I assume
Well,
at
we're
this
not
point.
finishing today, so, we're coming back on Thursday. I mean, everybody agrees that you need time to
Yes.
wrap it up. Well, and, you're gonna review and see if there's any other
Anything before I
witnesses
close
that
my
you
case,
need.
yes.
Okay, and then close it, and then arguments. I don't wanna, I mean, it's late in the day, it's almost 4 o'clock. Everybody agree that we're better off doing it on Thursday morning. Do we wanna do what we did today and do it at 8 AM, or would you prefer it a little bit? I'm at your, I'm a public servant, so whatever the parties.
Better, Judge.
Could we do like 8:45, because I have I do have an 8:30 Zoom that I had scheduled like all of my Zooms for 8:30 because I thought I could get them in real quick before we started. And I've been like trying to.
What is it that you have on Thursday?
It's just going to be me adjourning a case, so it'll only, that's why I'm saying like.
Well, why don't we schedule it for 8:30? Why don't we, if you guys, for
Perfect.
MSP, I've got a rip for Mr. Moore again. If we could have them here at 8, is that fair to, and then we'll try to get it lined up, have them here at 8.
It's gonna take me 5 minutes.
Yeah, so then, 8:15, whatever, and then we'll start again at, as close to 8:30 as possible. Does that work for everybody else, Mr. Goldstein? With Jill stuff? Okay.
Your Honor, I would ask simply that if Ms. Shackelford is going to call additional witnesses, that she let us know.
Yeah, if you're,
Would agree.
I don't necessarily, I will make sure everyone's on notice as soon as I know, but right this time, I just don't want to close rest.
no, I understand,
Because I
but
wanna go through my
email them,
agenda.
don't, email them tomorrow if you figure out that you're gonna call somebody else. I'm gonna go off the live stream, but then we're back on Thursday morning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Oh, I need my exam.
Sorry, I missed it. What time did she say?